I want to start with a scenario, and I think this is going to be painfully familiar to pretty much everyone listening. You're looking at your bank account, and you make this very firm, very logical promise to yourself. You say, okay, I am going to save money this month. No unnecessary spending. You are 100% committed.
And then what, 3 days later?
3 days. I mean, try 3 hours. You walk past the store window, you see that little red sticker that says 50% off.
Yeah.
And before your conscious brain has even processed what the item is, you're already walking toward the register. You've tapped your card before you even realize you didn't need the thing.
The red sticker, it just overrides all the logic. It's a classic override.
Or, okay, the exercise example. You buy the running shoes. You set the alarm for 6 p.m.
Yeah.
You have the perfect plan laid out. But when that alarm goes off, you don't just hit snooze, you stay in bed. And usually, when we look at that gap, the gap between what we plan and what we actually do, we diagnose it as a character flaw. We say, I'm just lazy, or I don't have enough willpower.
Which is the totally natural conclusion to draw, but it turns out it's the wrong diagnosis.
And that is the big premise we are testing today. We're arguing that these failures, they aren't about your character. They're about your operating system. We're essentially trying to run these high-level, modern applications like saving for retirement or consistent cardio on very, very ancient hardware.
Hardware is exactly the right word for it. I mean, we are dealing with biological structures in the brain that they haven't really had a firmware update in about, 50,000 years?
So to decode this, we aren't just looking at, self-help books today. We've pulled together a collision of 3 very different fields for this deep dive. We've got behavioral economics, specifically a cognitive examination by Dr. Ashutosh Khatakar. Then we have a heavy technical paper on neurobiology from the International Journal of Environmental Sciences.
Yeah, that one is dense, but it's the one that really explains the wiring.
And then, to make it all actionable, we're bringing in Charles Duhigg's bestseller, The Power of Habit, and a transcript on the philosophy of discipline from the Truth to Mastery series.
So it's a mix of the mechanical, how the brain actually fires, and the philosophical, how we actually live.
Exactly. The whole mission here is to pop the hood. By the end of this, I want you to understand specifically why you self-sabotage and the actual mechanics of how to rewrite that code. So let's start in the money, or rather the decision-making process. Dr. Khatakar's paper just attacks this whole idea of the rational actor. In classical economics, the assumption is that humans are basically calculators, right?
Right. If you take an Econ 101 class, you learn about the rational actor. And this model assumes that in any given situation, a human being will look at the options, weigh the pros and cons, calculate the probabilities, and then make the choice that maximizes their benefit. It assumes you're logical.
Which is a lovely theory until you actually meet a human being.
Exactly. Khatakar argues that this model is basically a myth. He calls us cognitive emotional organisms. We aren't driven by logic, we're driven by instinct, by memory, by bias. And to explain this, he breaks down the brain into something called dual system cognition. You've got system 1 and system 2.
I've heard of this concept, but usually it's just framed as like emotion versus logic. I want to get specific. How do these two actually interact?
Think of them as 2 different employees in your head. System 1 is your autopilot. It's fast, it's automatic, and it's incredibly efficient. When you see that 50% off sticker, System 1 is the one screaming, resource, grab it. It happens in milliseconds. It's pure intuition.
And System 2?
System 2 is the CEO. It's slow, it's logical, and crucially, it takes a lot of effort. It's the voice that eventually chimes in and says, wait, do we actually have room for another espresso machine, and can we even afford this?
But here's my question. And this is where I always get stuck. If System 2 is the smart one, the one that makes the good long-term decisions, why isn't it in charge? Why does the brain let the impulsive System 1 drive the car most of the time?
That is the million-dollar question. And the answer is energy. Biological energy.
I mean calories.
Literally calories. System 2 thinking, calculating, suppressing impulses is metabolically expensive. It burns a lot of fuel. If you had to use System 2 to open every door, decide every single step you take, and analyze every food item, you'd be exhausted by 9:00 a.m. So the brain defaults to System 1 to conserve energy. It's an efficiency mechanism.
So we're wired to be impulsive because it's cheaper for the brain.
Correct. We're cognitive misers. And Khatakar points out this really dangerous side effect called post-rationalization. Because System 1 acts so fast, we often buy the thing impulsively, and then we wake up System 2 only to invent a logical-sounding reason for why we did it.
So we're not using our intelligence to make the decision. We're using our intelligence to excuse our own stupidity.
Precisely. And this is all compounded by some, let's call them hardwired bugs in the software. And the biggest one mentioned in the text is loss aversion.
Right, this is the idea that losing something hurts more than winning the same thing feels good.
But the scale of it is what's really shocking. The data shows that the psychological pain of losing money is significantly more intense than the pleasure of gaining the same amount.
What's the ratio? Is it something like double?
Roughly, yes. Losing, say, 10,000 rupees hurts about twice as much as finding 10,000 rupees feels good.
Why, though? I mean, a dollar's a dollar. Why is the brain weighing them so differently?
Well, go back to that ancient hardware. In an ancestral environment, losing your resources, your food, your shelter, your tools, that could mean death. It was an existential threat. Gaining extra resources was just, a nice bonus. So we are hardwired to protect what we have at all costs.
The source brought up a really specific example of this, about investment habits in India, which I found really illuminating.
Oh, it is. The paper notes this strong cultural preference in India for gold and fixed deposits over, say, the stock market. Now, from a pure math perspective, a System 2 perspective equities usually outperform gold over the long term, but System 1 doesn't care about the long term. It cares about safety.
It just cares about not losing.
Exactly. The fear of seeing a stock portfolio dip, that fear of realizing a loss, it keeps people in safer, lower yield assets. It's a saving mentality that prioritizes the safety of the principal over the ambition of growth.
That makes total sense. And then you add present bias into the mix. The paper calls it temporal discounting.
And this is just the simple fact that we value now much, much more than later. If I offer you 500 rupees today or 700 in a month, your System 1 brain is just screaming, take the cash. The future is abstract. The present is tangible.
Which explains credit card debt perfectly.
Well,
It's that I get the TV now. Future me has to pay for it. And I don't envy future me, but, that's his problem.
Exactly. We treat our future selves like they're total strangers.
Okay, so that's the software bug. We're loss-averse, we're impatient, and we're always looking for caloric shortcuts. But I want to move to the hardware. How does a bad decision, like buying the shoes but never running, how does that physically wire itself into the brain? The neuroscience paper was pretty dense, but this concept of brain real estate really stood out to me.
This is where we can see the physical shift. We talked about the CEO, the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. This is where you make plans. I will go for a run.
But the CEO gets tired.
Right. And as you repeat a behavior, the PFC realizes, okay, we do this every day at 6 a.m. So to save energy, it offloads the task to a different part of the brain, the basal ganglia, specifically a region called the striatum.
The striatum, the autopilot.
Think of it as a script runner. Once a behavior moves to the striatum, you are no longer deciding to do it, you're just executing a stored script. It's why you can drive home and not even remember the journey.
So the CEO checked out. The striatum drove the car.
That's right.
That is frightening when you apply it to bad habits. It means I'm not actually choosing to eat the chips. I'm just running a script.
You're basically a passenger in your own body, and the fuel for that engine is dopamine. But, and this is a huge misconception the paper corrects, dopamine isn't just about pleasure.
Yeah, I always thought dopamine was the reward. You eat the chocolate, you get the chemical hit. That's the payload, right?
That's part of it. But what the paper explains is that dopamine is actually about reward prediction.
Prediction.
The biggest spike in dopamine doesn't happen when you eat the cookie. It happens when you see the cookie. It happens when you anticipate the reward.
So the craving isn't just a thought. It's a chemical event happening in your brain.
Yes, it's an anticipatory release. Your brain sees a cue, it predicts a reward, and it floods the system to force you to move. It's screaming, do this now.
Huh.
And chemically, through a process called long-term potentiation, this physically thickens the neural connections in the striatum.
Cells that fire together, wire together.
Literally. You are building a superhighway for that bad habit. The more you do it, the wider the road gets and the faster the car goes down it.
Okay, so we have a lazy CEO, an aggressive autopilot, and a chemical system designed to make us crave things before we even get them. It really feels like the deck is stacked against us.
It is, if you try to fight it with willpower alone. Willpower is a function of the PFC. It's a limited battery. You cannot win a war of attrition against your own basal ganglia. You will lose every single time.
So we have to outsmart it. Which brings us to Charles Duhigg and the power of habit. He simplifies this whole mess into a loop. Cue, routine, reward.
This is the master key. The cue is the trigger stress, time of day, whatever. The routine is the behavior. The reward is the feeling you get at the end.
And Duhigg's big argument, his golden rule of change, is that you can't just delete a habit. You can't just remove the software.
No, the neural pathway is physically there. You can't just erase the road. So to change a habit, you keep the cue and you keep the reward, but you swap the routine.
The Alcoholics Anonymous example was probably the strongest proof of this for me. I always just assumed AA was about willpower, about gritting your teeth and just saying no.
Not at all. Duhigg argues AA is a masterclass in habit replacement. An alcoholic feels stress. That's the cue. They drink the routine to get relief. The reward, AA says, when you feel that stress, the cue, go to a meeting and talk to people. That's the new routine. You still get relief and companionship, which is the reward.
So the brain still gets its fix, but the behavior is constructive instead of destructive.
Exactly. You aren't fighting the craving, you're just redirecting it. And the source mentions another layer to AA that's crucial: belief. For these new habits to stick when things get really tough, you need to believe that change is possible. And interestingly, that belief is almost always generated in a community. It's very, very hard to hack your own brain in isolation.
Speaking of hacking, I have to bring up the toothpaste story from the Duhigg summary. This just blew my mind. Claude Hopkins, this guy, he essentially programmed the world to brush their teeth.
It's diabolical genius. You have to understand the context. Before Hopkins, in the early 1900s, almost nobody in America brushed their teeth. It just wasn't a social norm. Pepsodent hired Hopkins to sell their toothpaste. But he couldn't sell clean teeth, because that's not a feeling. You can't really feel clean.
So what did he do?
He added mint oil and citric acid.
The tingle.
The tingle. The mint serves zero medical purpose. It doesn't clean your teeth any better. It's actually a mild irritant. But it created a tangible reward. People brushed, they felt the tingle, and their brain said, ah, it worked.
He created a craving for the irritation.
He hijacked the dopamine loop. If people didn't feel that tingle, they didn't think their teeth were clean. He created a sensory cue that solidified the habit for millions of people. He didn't sell hygiene. He sold a sensation.
That's a terrifying level of manipulation. But if we want to use this for good, Duhigg talks about keystone habits. The idea that you don't have to fix your whole life at once.
Right. Some habits have a domino effect. The classic example is exercise. When people start running, they often just start eating better, they smoke less, and strangely, they use their credit cards less often.
Wait, hold on. How does running connect to credit card debt? That feels like a massive leap.
It's about small wins. When you conquer the run, you prove to your internal CEO, your PFC, that you are capable of discipline. You get better at regulating your impulses. And that impulse control, it just bleeds over into other areas of your life. If you can say no to the snooze button, it's been just a little bit easier to say no to the impulse purchase.
So you're retraining the operating system one module at a time.
Exactly. You don't rewrite the whole code. You just patch one critical subroutine, and it improves the whole system's performance.
I want to pivot here, though. We've talked about the biology and the strategy, but there's this philosophical trap that people fall into, and the Truth to Mastery transcript hits this really, really hard. We have the plan, we have the habit loop, but we still stop.
The habit of stopping. This was the most profound part of the whole stack for me. We assume we fail because we aren't talented, or we're lazy, or we aren't motivated enough. But the source argues the real problem. It's the cycle of restarting.
The January 1st syndrome. You go hard for 3 weeks, you miss one day, you quit, and then you wait 3 months to start fresh.
And the energy cost of restarting is massive. It's like trying to stop a heavy freight train and get it moving again from a dead stop. Most people spend their whole lives in that startup phase just burning massive amounts of fuel, but never actually reaching momentum. They're perpetually starting over.
The source uses this term, invisible vote.
Yes. It says that every single action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. If you skip the workout, you are casting a vote for an identity of comfort. If you go anyway, you vote for an identity of growth.
And the scary part is that the votes are invisible. You don't see the result immediately. If I run today, I don't look any different in the mirror tomorrow.
And that triggers our present bias. We want that immediate result. But the source makes a distinction between motivation and commitment that completely reframes this entire thing.
Break that down, because we usually use those words interchangeably. I need to get motivated.
We shouldn't. Motivation is an emotion. It's loud, it's exciting, and it is temporary. Motivation asks, do I feel like doing this?
And usually if it's hard, the answer is no.
Exactly. But commitment is different. Commitment is quiet. It's boring. It doesn't ask how you feel. It asks, who do I become if I don't do this?
Oh, that's a much heavier question.
It shifts the focus from your feelings to your identity. The source argues that real progress is almost entirely invisible for a long time. It's the boring plateau. The people who succeed aren't the ones with the most motivation. They are the ones who can endure the boredom of doing the work when there is no applause and no dopamine hit.
That brings it all full circle, doesn't it? Our system one, that ancient brain, it wants the applause. It wants the 50% off sticker. It wants the minty tingle. It absolutely hates the boredom.
Correct. It wants the immediate signal that something happened.
So if we look at this entire stack econ, neuro, habit, philosophy, what's the synthesis here?
Yeah.
How do we actually upgrade the operating system?
I think it comes down to 3 steps. First, you have to accept your biology. You are wired for efficiency and impulse. Don't fight it with willpower. Expect it. Know that your brain is trying to trick you to save energy.
Stop trusting that rational actor. He doesn't exist.
Second, use the habit loop. Identify your cues. Don't try to delete the bad habits. Swap the routines. Hack the system, just like Claude Hopkins did. And use keystone habits to build that momentum.
And third,
Stop restarting. Break the habit of stopping. Shift from motivation, waiting for the lightning bolt to strike, to commitment, which is the quiet work of casting a vote for your future self, even when you don't see the results yet.
it's about showing up when the applause stops.
That is the only place where the future is actually decided.
I want to leave you with a specific challenge based on that. Think about one area in your life right now where you are relying on motivation. Where are you waiting until you feel like it to get started?
And then ask yourself, what is the invisible vote you are casting in that area today? Are you voting for the person you want to be? Or are you voting for the comfort of the person you're trying to leave behind?
Because your future isn't decided by big breaks. It's decided by the quiet habit of showing up when you don't want to. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.